Hey everybody, real
Hey,
pastors are back. Scared Gary.
I
That's
did.
perfect.
I was waiting on the countdown. I was I was trying to get out a enormous burp. So I thought that a countdown and it came out was a burp with a hey.
Yeah.
So
Well, this thing
welcome.
started real quick, so I was a little
Mm,
bit surprised on that end myself.
Glad to be here though. Glad to be here.
Yes.
We are well. Let's just say I'm glad to be here on the show. I'm a little bit. I'm hoping that I can stay mentally stable through today's episode and next week's episode.
Hmm.
But I'm not making any promises.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, as we continue diving into our Batman filmography here, we have to talk about all of them, right?
We
I mean, we
do.
have to. And
Hmm.
this is the beginning of the low points for Batman.
Hmm.
But after this week and next week, it gets better. So
It
there is
does.
promise. There is hope.
Yeah. And like it or not, these two movies we're going to talk about the next 2 weeks are a big part of our childhood, big
Yes, they
part of
are.
mine. And so today we are talking about the 1995 Jim Carrey film Batman Forever.
I like the way you put that.
There he is, front center. This is a Jim Carrey movie more than anything.
Yeah, it really is, and he takes it over, and it's just a shame that Tommy Lee Jones is in this because he's such a great actor,
Hmm.
and it's like why'd you sign up for this, man? But
Yeah.
either way, we got it. This is our first Schumacher, right? You know how to
Hmm.
say Schumacher
Joel
film?
Joel Schumacher.
Joel Schumacher, not Joe.
Rest
He's
his
good.
soul. Yeah, Joe Schumacher's he's out there somewhere, but
Yeah, doing his
yeah.
thing.
So this movie exists in the way it does because of Batman Returns.
Hmm.
The studio was not happy with the results of Batman Returns. It made a lot of money, but they were not happy in the direction. So there's an infamous story where Tim Burton came in to present his idea for Batman 3, and he's presenting it, and they said, don't you want to do something different,
Hmm.
than Batman? And they kept kind of, a term that Efren and I are familiar with. I think they were gaslighting him, but
Yeah. Oh
won't
yeah.
go too much further into that. But
Yep.
and he finally looked at all of them and said, you guys don't want me to do this, do you? And they were like, no, we do. And he goes, no, you don't. And that was it. They gave him a producer role in this movie, and the Tim Burton era of Batman, and thus the Michael Keaton era of Batman was over.
Because Michael Keaton would only do Batman if Burton was attached to it.
Yep.
So that was another big sticking point on why
Hmm.
they had to switch Batmans
Hmm.
and why Michael Keaton isn't a part of it. Because he's like, without Burton, I'm not doing it. Which makes
Yep.
sense. He already has a history with Burton doing
Yeah.
Beetlejuice. And what was the other thing he did already? I thought, of course, when there was something else. But anyway,
There probably is, yeah.
yeah. But like, so he already had a history with the director. And without him, he didn't see a point in doing it, which
Hmm.
a lot happens a lot. I mean, this is why you see certain directors keep having the same actors in their movies because they
Hmm.
have that relationship and those actors want to be in that movie. Michael Caine, for instance,
Hmm.
you always see him in Nolan movies.
Hmm.
Honestly, I don't know of a Nolan movie that doesn't have him in it, at least a cameo.
There's very few.
Yeah. And so, like, this isn't unusual to see, is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. And Johnny Depp, also Tim Burton.
Yeah.
Did you say him? I was spacing out. I'm sorry.
No, I did not say Johnny Depp yet.
So, okay. Yeah. So in steps Val Kilmer to take on the Cow as the Cape Crusader, Bruce Wayne.
Mhm.
And Ephraim, for me personally right now, this is the perfect week. Everything has lined up perfectly for me. I don't
Mhm.
know about you, but for me to talk about this movie, because yesterday I just watched the Val Kilmer documentary on Amazon Prime called Val.
Oh, good.
And first off, tremendous. Highly recommend watching it. I will say, I almost didn't watch it because they messed up the rating of this movie. It says rated R for language and nudity, and there's pretty much zero of both.
Oh,
So,
nice.
so yeah, don't let that deter anyone from watching it. And I get it if you do. The only nudity is Kevin Bacon and Sean Penn moon his video camera.
Oh, well, there it is.
So there's that.
All
So
right.
anyway, and the reason I say this is because Val Kilmer talked quite a bit about this role,
Okay.
and we'll get to that later. But it gave me some new insight on this movie.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and listen, Val Kilmer's a guy that I highly enjoy as an actor. One of my favorite roles of his, I'm gonna go ahead and throw this up here so we can see the man in question. One of my favorite roles of his is in Ghost in the Darkness.
Yes.
in that movie. I forgot to see. And the thing is, when I think of Ghost in Darkness, I think of him. I always forget his co-star. And I
Isn't it
forget.
it's either Michael Douglas or Emilio? Is Emilio Estevez?
I don't know, one of them two. But the thing is, but that just tells you all you need to know because Val Kilmer stole that movie.
Yes.
Right. I mean, I know he's the protagonist and all that stuff, but like, I remember four things about that movie. Val Kilmer.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the two lions, so one and
Yes.
two, so there's three. And then I remember the one black dude who I always forget his name, but in everything that he's in, he's freaking awesome. He's also in Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, he's in
Yep.
a
I
list
know
of things.
exactly who you're talking about.
Yep,
Yep.
I forget his name, but that dude also fantastic actor.
And he
Anytime he
doesn't
shows up, I
he
love
doesn't
him.
appear to age.
No, he doesn't. And in a movie based on a true story, and
Michael Douglas.
yeah, it is Michael Douglas. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so but that's like my favorite Val Kilmer one that I know and remember that he's in. But I'm sure there's
Mm-hmm.
other stuff because normally when you see him, you see like you're like, okay, this is probably a good. I mean, you know, it's well acted. You know, it's going to be a good.
Yeah.
Whether the movie's good or not, you at
Mm-hmm.
least know he's going to do a good job, do the best he can.
And he's a guy, and like I said, I highly recommend that documentary, especially if you grew up watching his movies, because the whole theme of that documentary is one, his recovery from throat cancer, but two, he takes it seriously. And we always talk about on the show, directors and actors that take their role seriously, and it's their art. We appreciate that. And he took Batman very seriously.
Yes.
And yeah.
Yeah, and this is why, honestly, for me, Gary, like I know you have your issues and stuff, but for me, what makes this movie watchable is because of Kilmer. Like, just to be honest with you, because he took it seriously. He wasn't trying to be campy. He did the best he could. And I think that's why I've always like, this movie isn't that bad. You know? I mean, I never thought it was good. I just always thought it was not as bad as everyone says, especially with what comes after it. But I was like, this wasn't as bad. And then the fact that, and I don't know what happened, maybe you can tell me more, but the fact that he didn't reprise his role in the next one was always like upsetting to me, which added even more to how much I hate that movie. Because if they would at least kept Val, I don't know. I don't know what could have happened. I don't know what my opinions were. But I enjoyed him as Batman. I did. And I thought he did a good job. With what
he was not bad in any he was fine. He was a fine Batman, fine Bruce Wayne. And do we want to get into what he said in the documentary about this role?
I think we should go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So he was so excited. He was filming The Island of Dr. Monroe with Marlon Brando, and that's an amazing part of the documentary. But anyway, we're not talking about that movie today. But anyway, he said, absolutely, I'd love to play Batman. What actor doesn't? He said it was my dream role. He told a story about being able to tour the set of the 1960s Batman and sit in the Batmobile. His dad took him to do it, and he said, I was in love and obsessed with the idea of playing Batman, and I went all into it until they put me in the bat suit. And he said that, and if you noticed, his bat suit is a little bit tighter than the other ones, I guess, and I never really thought about it, but he said it was so skin tight that he couldn't hear. And people just stopped talking to him because he couldn't hear them. And so he ended up being very isolated on set, just in this bat suit. And he said that Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey brought so much, basically said they were over the top, which they are.
Yeah.
Basically said they had that the focus was so much on them that he realized it doesn't matter what I do. I just literally just need to stand here in this bat suit and just be a Batman. And because they're running away with this. So it took him out of it. And he basically said, I was absolutely miserable making this movie. And so and with that being said, it is it's a credit to him that we got the performance out of him that we did. Talking about the way he did, like he was absolutely heartbroken at at the result and at the experience. Because this was the role of a lifetime for him. And I never realized that until watching this. So
neither did I.
Yeah.
I mean, but I can, like, hearing you say that he said that's what he said. I can definitely see that happening though. Because when I think about this movie, you think of those two, you also think of Nicole Kidman and like how like so much was like around her, you know, I mean, like even the scenes with her and Batman, like all he did was stand there when she was around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that, I mean, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. He makes a comment that he's constantly standing with his hands on his hips in the movie because he literally didn't know what else to do because it was all focused around. And I think you guys can probably guess by now on this show, talking about this movie. Efren likes this movie more than I do. So last week when we talked about Mask of the Phantasm, and I talked about how the older I got, the more I loved that movie. This one's the exact opposite.
Right.
I loved it as a kid. I remember couldn't wait to see it. It was everywhere. McDonald's, those glasses. You said you still have those glasses, some of those glasses, right?
Yeah, I think I got 2 of them.
Yeah, I think that, and there was like special coins, I think, for Two-Face. Yep. This movie was everywhere. And the marketing was incredible, you know. And I remember, I will never forget, we were NASCAR fans growing up because, you know, yeehaw, rednecks. And Bill Elliott drove the Batman Forever McDonald's car. And my dad, for years, wore a tank top of that T-shirt of Bill Elliott. He wore it so much that I think he probably still has it. He's you know, he doesn't throw anything away. But anyway, this movie was everywhere. So, but as an adult, I don't like this movie. It bothers me a lot. And the issues are the Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones basically throughout the entire movie, in my opinion, do really bad Joker impersonations. That's that takes me out of it. And it does have the campy style to it. However, it tries to have a serious tone as well. And it tries to do both, and it just doesn't mix well. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get it. And I like, it's like, because things are so true, right? Like the fact that Tommy Lee Jones was as over the top as he was as Two-Face just made no sense. And I think, and here's the thing, is I think after animated series, since it exists, it existed before this movie, and we got a fantastic Two-Face out of that. I think when you have that Two-Face that we grew up watching as kids, and then you see that the Tommy Lee Jones Two-Face, it just didn't seem right. Like it just seemed out of character for Two-Face, and it was just like, why is he so weird? Why is he so over the top? And I understand maybe he was trying to play up to the two sides of Two-Face, the multiple personality thing, but like it just wasn't done well.
No,
like at all. Like seriously, like, Tommy Lee Jones was probably my most hated part of the whole movie. Like I truly just despised it, and I couldn't stand it.
That sentence has probably never been said before. Tommy Lee Jones is the worst part of a movie. I mean, but I agree with you because he doesn't like, and he admits it. Like there's in the Blu-ray extra of this movie, he admits it. I had no idea anything about the source material. I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew I was supposed to be a bad guy, and so he just did what he could. But here's the other thing: we get no backstory. He's just Two-Face. You know, the most backstory is there's a news clip where he gets sprayed in the face at a court hearing, and Batman is a horrible part. If you remember what I'm talking about, like the Batman apparently is in the courtroom and tries to save him. It's like a 10-second clip, and that's how he becomes Two-Face. And one of the best villains in Batman is Two-Face because of that dynamic, but also of how he becomes Two-Face. And we don't get any of that. None of it. You know?
You don't get any of that. And I think they did that because, let's be real, who was Harvey Dent before this showed up?
Billy D. Williams.
And they recasted him.
Yeah.
For Tommy Lee. So like, if this is supposed to be the same continuity, but you have this different actor, what other choices? So that's what I'm saying. Like everything around this character just made it to where like, it's just absolutely awful.
Yep.
Like I hated it. I hated his makeup. I hated the way he
makes no sense.
Yeah, I hated it. It was horrible. His acting for it, the way he did it was absolutely terrible. Like the story was terrible. Again, no Billy D. Williams. So like, it was just dumb. It was just all kinds of dumb. And for me, and like, you know what? I remember like as a younger kid and stuff, Jim Carrey was Jim Carrey, right? I mean, they basically just got who was at the hype right now.
Yeah,
we needed someone crazy. I guess like looking back on it as an adult, I think Jim Carrey was just trying to do the Adam West, the guy who played that Riddler. I forget his name, and like try to do him, like his version, which just didn't work. You know, especially once you had Jack Nicholson as Joker.
Yeah,
like you can't do that. And then even like I was watching a documentary with Mark Hamill for his voice for he got inspiration for his voice was that Riddler as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like, and Jim Carrey was also just being Jim Carrey, but
Mm-hmm.
I think at the time as a kid, I was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, Jim Carrey's being him. This is cool. He's funny. This is who he is.
Yeah.
So I think I accepted it more. Where with
Mm-hmm.
Tommy Lee Jones, and honestly, as a kid, I don't think I knew who he was, but
Mm-hmm.
it was one of those things I was just like, this guy's terrible.
Yeah. We hadn't gotten Men in Black yet. We were still 2
No.
years away from that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And Men in Black is when I started realizing who he was and what he could do.
yeah.
And you know, but for that, I just remember hating everything about that. But for me, it was because of the animated series.
Yeah.
When you saw animated series and you saw that, and I was like, this is trash.
I knew Tommy Lee Jones from The Fugitive. He's great in
yeah.
that movie.
See, The Fugitive, I just remember Harrison Ford. I didn't even remember he was
Yeah.
in it for the longest time.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. So yeah, this movie was marketed around Jim Carrey.
It was.
I mean, he was at the top. I mean, Jim Carrey was everywhere. He made, you know, and he was Jim Carrey. In this movie, he does Jim Carrey things.
Yeah.
You know, the problem is, going on what you said, I think Tommy Lee Jones tried to also do Jim Carrey things while also trying to do Jack Nicholson things while also have no idea what he's doing. And, you know, it's just, and did he, speaking of the backstory, did he was he attacked did he get attacked in a crayon factory or something? And he's just got I don't understand. It's like a giant piece of violet. It's like, I don't understand it at all. And then
it was absolutely terrible. And
wasted opportunity because Two-Face is such a great character.
yes, it is. And you already had the setup from Batman Returns. Like you already had that backstory. You already had it there. All you had to do was tap into it. You know, should have kept Billy D. Williams. Like there's just so much they should have done.
Yeah.
And it was just so frustrating for me. And then when you talk about the marketing, like you're right. Like what I remember is Riddler stuff everywhere. So Jim Carrey and the fact that Robin was going to be in it.
Yeah.
That's like the two things.
That's right.
That
Oh, you haven't talked about him yet.
yeah, that I remember. And we can get to that in a second, but that's all I remember. So when I see stuff like this, right? I mean, look, I know we've been talking about these two. I mean, even look at that, right? Like Jim Carrey's red hair, like I get it. You had to do red hair for the Riddler, this, that, the other. But that, and then like you look at Tommy Lee Jones, like they just look ridiculous. Like it just looks utterly ridiculous. And then, and even though like his costume is classic, like the Riddler costume is classic, at this point in time, it just looked dumb. Like it just did. And again, animated series problems, right? I mean, animated series stepped up the costume for the Riddler and stuff like that. And what have we always said about superhero movies? Superhero movies or superheroes are only ever as good as their villains. And that is the beginning of the end for this movie. Like, granted, I can watch this movie, be entertained, and be like, okay, it's not so bad. But at the same time, it's not good, you know?
Yeah.
And the villains weren't good. They weren't written well. They weren't explained well. I mean, didn't Riddler, wasn't he, because I didn't go back and rewatch this in time, but didn't he like fall out of a window too or something?
No, he worked for Wayne Enterprises and he had this brainwave TV gadget.
Oh, that's right.
He things, whatever he called it, and he presented it to Bruce Wayne, and Bruce Wayne just says, you know, Edward, there's just too many questions, and that sent him off the deep end, and then he ends up killing his boss, and then all of a sudden he turns into question mark man as he says in the thing, you know. But the Riddler, So, and I think the riddles aren't even a big part of the movie.
No,
you know, and it's just this movie is just, it will always be looked at as a missed opportunity to me. And there are some, and this is going to be controversial, and I guarantee you're going to disagree with what I'm about to say, which is fine. There, in some ways, in a lot of ways, I dislike this movie more than Batman and Robin. Because
that's a bold statement, sir.
Because Batman and Robin, is it atrocious? Absolutely. Is it pure trash? Yes. Is it a dumpster fire? Yes. But they knew what they were doing. They were self-aware. They set out to make that movie. This movie, like, they didn't really know what they were doing. They were trying. They had no idea what tone they were trying to set. They had no idea what they were doing with their villains, and it's a mess, I think. And without Val Kilmer, it would be even worse. You know. But you know, I just, because you have these two iconic villains that would play really well off each other, but instead we get that.
Yeah. Well, for me, honestly, I think they shouldn't have had both. They should just.
That's true, because they're two big main villains. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have two big main villains who deserve their own story and all that kind of stuff, like their own backstory and all that. And like, that's the one thing I always remember. I was like, why are both of these in this?
Yeah.
Because essentially, Two-Face, which this would never happen, turned into a henchman for Riddler.
Yes.
And like, and I always like, even as a kid, I remember like, why is Two-Face like such a punk? Like, so like the two should not have existed. And so for me, I guess in this one, they just try to do too much. Like I felt like they knew what they wanted to do. They just tried to do too much too fast.
Yeah.
And I think that was the biggest problem. And then, when you bring in someone like Jim Carrey, you're gonna get campy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can't help it. Yeah.
That's what you're gonna. I mean, even in his more serious roles that I've seen, all right, like a cable guy, if you will, he was still Jim Carrey.
Yeah. That movie depresses me.
Yeah, and I never watched it, but I heard like 23 and whatever other series
That was
he
a
tried to
freaky
do.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah, but even then, I heard that it was still hard not to see him as Jim Carrey, even though he was being serious. So it's like you can't cast someone like him and expect it not to feel campy. So I think they knew what they wanted. I think they knew what they set out to do. But if you hire Jim Carrey, you're not going to be able to get the more serious with a couple bit of fun.
Yeah.
I think they were just trying to add more fun to what Burton did, but it just didn't work out because of bad casting.
Yeah.
And so that's why it feels like for me, where Batman and Robin, you're 100% correct. They knew what they were going to make it, and they knew what they were doing. Yeah. I just thought the whole thing was just complete trash. We'll talk about that next week. And I hate it so much. And like what you said, this is going to go down as a missed opportunity, and I think that's why I give this one more grace.
And Robin Williams really wanted to play the Riddler.
Yep.
Really, really. It'd have been great.
I know he wanted to play the Riddler. I can't remember what happened. I saw a thing I guess last week. I should have went back and looked at it, but I remember them saying like he wanted to do it, and whether it was, I think it was scheduling conflicts or something.
It was that, plus I mean the marketing power of Jim Carrey.
Yeah,
I think that's what drove. I'm sure there was many other reasons, but
even then, Robin Williams is at his height too.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So I don't know, but as we know, WB has made stupid decisions left and right with their DC property. Probably the best decision they've ever made was hiring Christopher Nolan and say, do something with this, which we'll get to that later as well.
Yes, we will. I just want to say so the Joel Schumacher era of Batman, you know what Batman's first line is in the Joel Schumacher era?
As Batman, you mean?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Even as a kid, I thought it was ridiculous. Alfred says, "Can I persuade you to take a sandwich with you, sir?" And Batman, as Val Kilmer, Batman looks at him and says, "I'll get drive-through."
Yeah.
And then next week we'll talk about Hi Freeze.
Yeah.
I'm Batman.
And seeing like the whole "I'll get drive-through" thing too, man. Like,
he's just trying to a subliminal message, trying to get people to go buy McDonald's on the way home.
That's exactly what it was.
Pretty sure we did.
That's why that line was in there. Yeah. That is why. So they could use it, because I remember that commercial.
Yeah.
I'll get drive-through. That line was in that movie for that reason.
Yeah. And then the whole movie I'm thinking, does Batman go through the drive-through?
He can't.
I mean, how does I just can't picture Batman on the way to the crime scene. It's like I gotta get a double quarter pounder cheese and then eat it and just anyway, I
highly doubt Batman's eating fast food.
I guarantee he's not.
Yes. So anyway. Yeah, I mean, so Gary, I did pull up a picture. Probably try to maybe ruin your mind here a little bit, or maybe what could have been. I don't know, but I found someone who redid the poster, like so. What do you think of that, sir?
You shouldn't have done that. Why'd you do that? Come on, man. Wow.
I'm just saying. Isn't that cool though?
That is a perfect example of this could have been great.
Yep, it is.
Wow. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, and so I found this, and I was like, we have to show this. And I think that this is why I was bringing up animated series stuff, and the fact that this movie came up after animated series already had stuff out. We've seen these villains, and it's just like, you had to have played on that.
Yeah.
Like, if they would have played on that and done better, this movie probably would have done better. And then I found this, and I was like, exactly. This proves my point. I mean, even just looking at that, I'm like, this is a great movie. Just by seeing that poster. If that movie existed.
I might print that poster out. We do got to give a shout out to Chris O'Donnell, who I think was not bad as Robin in this movie. I think he was fine. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't hold it against him.
yeah,
Honestly, this movie or the next one, I don't hold it
yeah,
against him what happened.
yeah, yeah. You can't.
Because I mean, I think Chris O'Donnell again did good with what he had, what he was given.
Yeah,
And I think that, and I think what's going to be weird is that, historically you had a Robin who was much younger than Batman. And I mean, and it was just like you had this grown man
yeah,
who became Robin. It was just weird. Like the whole thing was just weird. And even the way
yeah,
it started, and he's like, I made this for you. And then like, I always remembered, I always hated this, even as a kid, when Batman was like, what do we call him? And he like, looks up at Alfred kind of like lovingly and like, I'm Robin. And I'm just like, this, what? Remember as a kid, I was like, that's weird. Why did they introduce him like that?
Well, even the backstory of why they called him Robin didn't make any sense.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. I need to step away. I have a 4-year-old that's losing his mind in the living room, so
Uh-oh.
bear with me. So
No, you're good. So, as we go in and just kind of wrap up here a little bit, I mean, those are kind of our thoughts on Batman. I mean, here's what you have is like, you have this movie that just had so much promise. And yes, some people like myself, even as a kid, was just kind of thinking like, man, I don't know what's going to happen with this. I mean, it's not the same Batman. It doesn't look the same, doesn't feel the same, but it's still Batman. I want to go see it. And then you get disappointed because of what happens. And here's the thing. And this has been a problem like for a long time. We've seen it over and over and over again. You think studio executives would learn, but they don't because they're selfish and they're greedy and there's just no other way to put this. But when studios get in the way of things and they don't let directors direct, they don't let screenwriters, write properly. They don't let they don't let the artists who know what they're doing do their job. When these executives get in the way, when the studios get in the way, you get junk like Batman Forever, and that's what happens. And that's what upsets me the most is like, man, if they would have just let the directors do their job and do their vision, then you have greatness. And I will bring this point up again when we talk about the Dark Knight trilogy, because they gave Christopher Nolan the reins to do what he wanted. And look at that. So at sometimes, especially Warner Brothers, sometimes they learn their lesson, they let it happen and you get greatness. Sometimes they don't and they screw it up. And that's part of the issue of what happened here. Like we said, Tim Burton had a vision. He was ready to do the next one. Studio got in the way. And then, even with Schumacher, again, studio was in the way. I wonder what movie we would have gotten if he was able to do his vision. I just wonder.
the rumor I've always heard is his vision, and tell me if this isn't Tim Burton to a T, it was going to involve Scarecrow. Obviously this is just stuff internet speculation was going to be that the Scarecrow, the stuff what do you call it? The
fear gas
toxin, was going to cause Batman to have flashbacks of Jack Nicholson's Joker. And that would have been cool. And I think Harvey Dent was going to be in it too, which I think Scarecrow and Two-Face, I mean,
that duo would make more sense.
Yeah. So, but hey, who knows? We're living in a time where Flashpoint's being filmed, and maybe we'll get that third Burton Batman.
But at this point, you might as well do a Burton Batman Beyond. Or maybe, huh?
Let's get them both.
Yeah. I want to say, or get a third Batman where he's old man Batman trying to figure it out. That would lead into a Batman Beyond movie.
That's good. Yeah. Or like a Tim Burton directed Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
It leads into
something
Batman
like
Beyond.
that.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Anyway,
I'd be okay with that.
That would be cool. Well, that's Batman Forever.
Yes, it is.
If you haven't watched it, check it out.
Yeah, check it out. It's not as bad as the next one. Well, I would say skip it altogether, but
the next one.
But that's what we got. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Another talk into Batman. We have a few more coming. Like we just got to dig in. There's just so much Batman to talk about. We got to dig into it.
Indeed.
So
go check out Val on Amazon Prime.
There you go. Check out Val. Check out what's coming up. We have a review for you guys. Jungle Cruise review. We took our daughters to go see.
We did
that, so be on the lookout for that if you haven't seen that review yet. And then check out any other reviews you have coming out. Stuff's coming out, guys. We got things to review and we're excited about it.
We have things to talk about. So movie talking time in its prime.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys.